So recently, I watched the movie Jennifer's Body for the first time. I know I was sleeping on that movie. And other than this movie now sliding into my top 10 favorite horror-ish movies, I was intrigued to watch it after coming across an article while researching some true crime topics that had some pop culture ties to them. In this case, chilled me to the core because if you have not seen it, the movie Jennifer's Body is about a girl who gets sacrificed to the devil by a boy band who feel that the only way to achieve the fame and success they desire is to sacrifice a virgin to Satan. And the kicker is that this movie is loosely based off of this very case. So if you think about what I just said, human sacrifice, and that the movie was based off of this case, then I'm sure you can guess that we are in for quite the ride in today's video. So Elyse Pahler was born on April 24th, 1980, and she lived in Arroyo Grande, California with her parents David and Lisanne. On July 22nd, 1995, 15-year-old Elyse was at home watching TV with her parents on this otherwise normal Saturday night. Elyse wasn't a perfect child, but her parents described her as an independent girl who was very friendly and wanted to get to know everyone. That was when Elyse received a call from one of her friends who asked her if she wanted to come and hang out with him and two of their other friends. He said that they had some marijuana and wondered if she wanted to come meet up with them. Their names were Jacob Delschmidt, who was 15, Royce Casey, who was 16, and Joseph Fiorella, who was 14. And had Elyse told her parents about the circumstances of this phone call, they would not have allowed her to go out with these boys because Elyse had actually recently been admitted to the Mariposa Community Recovery Center, where she was getting treatment for drug and alcohol abuse, which was also where she had met Jacob. The three boys were also in a rock band called Hatred, so they were probably not the best influence of friends to hang around with, but teenagers don't always make the best decisions. So Elyse tells her parents that she's going to go up to her room to go to sleep, but instead sneaks out to go and meet up with these boys and smoke with them at a nearby eucalyptus grove. And once I read this, I immediately thought about the case of Skylar Neese, who was murdered by her two best friends when they were out smoking pot one night, just because they apparently didn't want to be friends with her anymore, which I have a video on if you're interested. It is incredibly tragic. But Elyse had met up with these boys and everything seemed normal at first. They were just hanging out, having a good time, and Elyse didn't even see it coming. Suddenly, Jacob removed the belt he was wearing and fastened it around Elise's neck, while Royce held down her arms. That's when Joseph pulled out a hunting knife and began stabbing Elyse in the neck. Elyse was screaming, crying out for help, praying, calling for her mom, but the boys didn't stop. They each took turns stabbing at her, stomping on her neck, trying to kill her as fast as they could, then dragging her body over to the edge of the grove where she was just left to die. And after she was dead, they each took a turn at sexually assaulting her corpse. The reason that these boys had murdered Elyse was because they wanted to commit a sacrifice to the devil so that their heavy metal band Hatred could therefore achieve the level of craziness needed for them to go professional. And I can't wrap my head around this, but aside from the fact that the boys just left her body at this eucalyptus grove, they would actually return to it multiple times to continue having sex with her corpse. Continuously. They then went and bragged about the murder to their friends and how they were now necrophiles, and the amazing thing here is that even though they were admitting to legitimately committing a crime, all of the friends that they told this to just thought that they were joking. None of them took it seriously. Joseph had even told his mom about what they had done and she just laughed it off as a joke. And during this whole time, Elyse was just considered missing. I think due to her previous troubles with alcohol and drugs, the police most likely just took this as her being a runaway. None of her friends and family knew that she had actually been murdered and that her body was lying in a eucalyptus grove just so close to her house. And 8 months would go by before her body was found. In March of 1996, Elyse's body was finally located, and the autopsy performed on her indicated that she had been stabbed 12 times, with none of the stab wounds actually being what killed her. She had died slowly and painfully from blood loss. The police, meanwhile, were at a loss as to who could have done this, as such a violent crime pointed them toward looking at known violent offenders in the area. It didn't cross anybody's minds that 3 teen boys were the vicious attackers that did this to their friend. The boys said that they had been practicing Satanism prior to the murder, and please note that Satanists do not perform human sacrifices. These boys did not seem to realize what Satanism actually is, but at one point Royce decided that his views no longer aligned with what he thought Satanism's views were, where instead he converted to Christianity, where the guilt ate at him until he told the police about what he and his friends had done to Elyse. Apparently Royce was scared about what could happen next, because I guess the other two guys had planned on murdering others as well, and Royce was scared that he might be next, due to one of the band Slayer's lyrics that go, "If you're not with us, you may no longer exist." So Royce spilled the beans on everything to the police, though at first he tried to claim that they never had sex with Elise's corpse, that they thought about it, but ultimately decided against it. But the police knew that this was a lie since there was evidence of sexual assault on her body. He then told them that the three of them had been planning Elise's murder for over a month before they did it. According to Royce, the three of them would hang out listening to death metal music and discussing how they were going to go about sacrificing Elyse to the devil. Apparently they'd gotten a lot of their inspiration from reading occult books, as well as the band Slayer, because Slayer would often sing about Satan and sacrifices in their music, such as this one line from their song Altar of Sacrifice that goes, quote, "High priest awaiting dagger in hand, spilling the pure virgin blood, Satan's slaughter ceremonial death, answer his every command." And for the boys, the shtick was that the sacrifice to Satan had to be a virgin, and that this would appease Satan to the point where he would reward them by making their band Hatred famous. Because according to Royce, Jacob and Joseph believed that to kill Elyse and receive power from the devil meant that they would be able to receive more craziness, which in turn would allow them to play harder and faster, with that somehow being the catalyst to them making it big in the music industry. But that wasn't the end to Royce's story. Royce told police that Jacob and Joseph had actually tried to murder Elyse before with someone else who wasn't Royce. In this instance, the three boys had asked Elyse to go for a walk with them, where they led her to a steep ravine in basically the same area as they were smoking pot. One of the boys then pretended to slip down the ravine and tried getting Elyse to go down and rescue him. Joseph then reportedly took out a knife, tossed it to this other guy, and were trying to egg on this guy to kill Elyse, but he couldn't do it. And I don't know how or why, but I guess Elyse didn't think much of this incident and must have thought they were joking or something, because she never told anybody about it and obviously stayed friends with them and snuck out of the house on the night she died to go and hang out with them. The reason that Elyse was chosen, other than her being a virgin, was that, according to Royce, they thought that she would most appease the devil. Due to her blonde hair, blue eyes, she would make the ultimate sin against God, which would ensure their ticket to hell. So the other two boys obviously got arrested, and Jacob admitted to the three of them using meth and acid regularly, which some wondered if that was part of the reason why they even committed an act like this in the first place, and then just go on as normal afterward, while others thought that it was the influence of the band Slayer, who were using references to things like sacrifices and Satan in their lyrics. And let me tell you, I don't think I had ever heard a Slayer song prior to learning about this case, and I listened to a couple of them, and the lyrics are definitely imaginative in their imagery in Satan and rituals, etc., which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth when Elyse's parents come more into play here. But according to Joseph, it was he who was interested in the occult first, that he started reading into it and just developed a general interest in it, as a lot of people do. The occult isn't all Satan and sacrifice. Like, the occult covers all aspects of the supernatural, magic, astrology, just spiritualism, and new age stuff that honestly lots of us are into. But I mean, there is the opportunity to look into the darker side of the occult as well, and it seemed like that was the path that Joseph was going down. And he brought it up to his friends to see if it was something that they would be interested in too. And they were, and since Joseph had more knowledge on the subject because he had been studying it longer, he essentially became the leader. The boys were most interested in Satanism and actually began talking online with other Satanists, and eventually apparently the boys even started to grave rob for some reason. Royce, however, seemed to be having the most trouble with his identity, and after the murder of Elyse began writing in his journal, where he would constantly talk about how Satan had risen and was now reigning supreme, and how serial killers make Satan happy, and how Satan would become even happier if people would start building temples in honor of him. He wrote that he liked going back to the eucalyptus grove after Elise's murder and admiring their evidence of spiritual supremacy. Literally quoted from his journal just 3 months after killing Elyse. "I'm fighting on the other side now. allied with the darkened souls. Satan's raised and shall conquer and reign. In the Bible, it says that in the end, Lucifer will bring out his best in everything. Music, love, murder. All of the psycho serial killers and rapists don't know that if they would just build an altar of sacrifice and kill the person on the altar and then have repeated sex with the corpse, virgin meat is the ultimate sacrifice. And what's incredibly interesting is that all three of the boys said that it was Slayer's music that inspired them the most to commit the murder. When Joseph asked Jacob if he would be down to sacrifice a virgin at their trial, where the three of them all pleaded no contest to the murder, which means that they're technically not admitting guilt, but they do admit that the charges laid against them do look pretty bad. It's essentially a cop-out saying that you're not guilty, but you're not innocent either. And all three were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison in different facilities throughout California. So then in 1996, Elyse's parents, David and Lisanne, actually filed a lawsuit against the band Slayer, which actually ended up gaining worldwide attention due to the possible impact that this lawsuit could have on the music industry. As there were many record labels attached to this lawsuit as well, the parents claimed that the band was basically marketing like a tobacco company, intentionally trying to market their product to children, and that in the 38-page claim, the songs Altar of Sacrifice, Kill Again, Tormentor, and Necrophiliac were to blame for the bad influence they brought upon the boys, with specifically the songs Postmortem and Dead Skin Mask gave the boys instructions on how to stalk, rape, torture, murder, and commit acts of necrophilia. And I mean, I suppose there are some references to similarities from the murder, such as the lyrics that go tighten the tourniquet around your neck, and Dead Skin Mask has the words Ed Gein in it, who was a serial killer in the 90s. But this doesn't really matter because the lawsuit got thrown out, with the judge telling Elyse's parents that while Slayer's lyrics are repulsive and profane, they don't instruct listeners to commit the acts that resulted in the vicious torture murder of Elyse, and that, quote, there's not a legal position that could be taken that would make Slayer responsible for the girl's death. Where do you draw the line? You might as well start looking through the library at every book on the shelf. So undeterred, her parents filed a second lawsuit, this time on the grounds that Slayer knowingly distributed harmful material to minors, with the Pahler's lawyers stating that none of the vicious crimes would have occurred against Elyse without the intentional marketing strategy of the death metal band Slayer. But technically, the record label wasn't at fault for this either, because there was a parental advisory sticker put on the album stating that this music contains violent and sexual language in its lyrics, and by stating all of this, they technically were warning people about the subject matter this band was singing about. Which, I mean, even so, it's not like these kids can't go and purchase these CDs with these warning labels on them without their parents knowing and listen to it without their parents' knowledge. But either way, the judge said that he didn't consider the music to be obscene, indecent, or harmful to minors, and this suit was dismissed as well. The band didn't stay quiet about this either, as the drummer Paul Bostaff gave an interview to Guitar World magazine saying that the parents of Elyse Pahler were trying to blame the whole thing on their band, when really the blame should only be put on the killers, saying, quote, if you're going to do something stupid like that, you should get in trouble for it. And interestingly, Slayer was not the only band to be blamed for some sort of tragedy involving their music. Another band called Judas Priest came under fire when a group of teens made a suicide pact over the alleged subliminal lyric of "Do It." But the case ended up being dismissed over the boys having troubled backgrounds. Following that, another suicide pact was made where 3 teens killed themselves, and one of them shot himself while listening to the song Suicide Solution by Ozzy Osbourne, where these boys, I guess, misheard one of the lyrics and thought it went, I tell you to end your life, when it was later proven that the lyric was actually, I tell you to enjoy life, and also due to one of the boys telling his father that Ozzy had the solution and then killed himself. But this case was also thrown out after being shown that his music did not contribute to the boys' deaths. A few years later, Jacob gave an interview to the Washington Post saying that he'd changed his stance on his original statement that Slayer's music was the reason for killing Elyse, and that the real reason was because Joseph was obsessed with her and wanted to kill her. But then when Joseph was up for parole, he was talking about how the music got inside his head, saying that it was embarrassing that he was so influenced by it. Not the drugs that they had supposedly been taking or anything like that, but that is pretty much where this case ends. I would love to know your thoughts on it. Obviously, the movie Jennifer's Body has some supernatural elements to it that obviously are not based off of this case, but there are some of the bare bones elements to the story that the movie takes, and it is very heartbreaking to watch and enjoy enjoyable movie like Jennifer's Body, but at the same time know that it's based off of such a horrific tragedy that had taken place with such a young girl. But that is it for today's video. If you are new to my channel, please give this video a like and subscribe if you have not already. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.